Hello and welcome to this OpenTermHub tutorial on step-by-step instructions for loading sandbox data using syndication. OpenTermHub is an open source Fire terminology server that can be deployed as a Docker container and can syndicate data with the cloud TermHub service, which has a library of code systems or terminologies, value sets or subsets, and concept mappings or map sets. And this tutorial is going to step through how to stand up a running OpenTermHub Docker instance and fill it with data using the syndication mechanism. So if we go to this step-by-step instructions, the second link here, we'll see the first thing that we need to do is export the sandbox key. So any project in TermHub, we can set a project API key, and the sandbox project has an open public key for this. And this key allows access to information from this particular project in the Cloud TermHub environment. So this is directly linked to the TermHub Sandbox project, which has a variety of small mini terminologies. So we'll set this here, and that's just to get the key kind of handled. Then coming down here, there's two options for actually running this thing. One is we could actually run the Java directly like the project itself. But it's recommended to actually easier option is to just run with the Docker image. So here we're going to choose an index directory. OpenTermHub uses Lucene to track all of the data and serve requests. So we need to make sure a directory exists and is not pre-filled with other data. Then we launch a Docker image. Here we're specifying the project API key we set above. This can alternatively be set to a project API key for your project in Cloud TermHub, and it will syndicate the data that you have specified that you wanted. Enable post-load computations does some computing of tree position things that help drive the browser, the embedded browser environment that's part of OpenTermHub. We'll get to that at the end. You can turn it off if you're only interested in using Fire APIs, and the loads are a little bit faster. So we'll run this here and launch the Docker image. Oops, there we go. And so we can just take a quick peek here to show that the Docker image is running. There we go. This is the log starting up and almost ready here. Yep. And then upon startup here, you can see that it has begun dealing with syndication. So when the server starts, it checks to see whether data is available for this project and begins loading it. And so here in this log, you can kind of see that happening. And then if we just look at this again, it's going through and downloading data and loading it in. So here we can watch it run along. So no additional steps are required. The whole point of syndication is that it discovers the data. The cloud terminology server of TermHub publishes a feed that exposes this if you have that project API key set. And then when the server launches, it automatically downloads the data and installs it. There are options for re-syndication checking on a regular schedule to sort of manage automatic updates. That's outside the scope of this tutorial, but those are options for managing data in a comprehensive way with minimal effort in a deployed project. We'll talk about that more in a later tutorial. So this is running along. It should finish shortly, and then we can go have a look at some other assets. While this is running, though, we can come along and show that the Swagger documentation is up. So we'll come here and reload this page, and you'll see that the API is available through Swagger. And then this is the native terminology API, but Fire R4 and R5 terminology service APIs are available as links from here also. And they have their own their own Swagger pages as well, so that you can interact through this environment with various things in R4 or R5. After that, we've got a number of ways of actually showing that this is up and loaded now. You can use this Postman collection, or there's a series of just curl calls that do a variety of things. First, ones that demonstrate various aspects of the native terminology API, as well as Fire R4 and R5, which are very similar, so you just need to decide which one that you want to use. So I'm going to stop this here, and we can run a couple of these commands now that it's fully loaded. So if I do this, it'll show all the terminologies that are loaded. And you can see here that there are 4. 5 actually, because the sandbox has SNOMED and ArcSnorm, ICD-10, LOINC, and SNOMED US. So the sandbox project in TermHub has both SNOMED International and SNOMED CT US. Uh, so that's important to understand. And then, of course, you can run through these other. I'm not going to show all of them in this tutorial, but they demonstrate the capabilities. And then you could do the same fire things here and look at the various results. So this is the fire code system response. You can see it's very similar. Once you're finished loading everything also, there's an opportunity to use the embedded browser. So you can open this link once it's stood up and go to this URL here, and this is the browser. So these 5 terminologies are loaded. If you click on these buttons, you can see the other things that are loaded. If we click on one of these buttons and click search like this, you can get a sense of the content that's in here. It's only a small portion of the total content of the US edition of SNOMED here because we're just using minis to demonstrate functionality, but you can kind of see how this report view lays everything out. We have access to hierarchies and you can kind of navigate your way around. And in this case, the mappings to ICD-10 are also loaded. And you can play around with this browser to investigate the content. Were you to launch this Docker container with a project API key pointing to a full TermHub project that had, the entire versions of LOINC or SNOMED or ArcStorm or ICD-10, you'd be able to then browse the entire terminologies here. So that's a quick snapshot of how to use OpenTermhub in syndication mode to automatically pull in content on startup and then be able to interact with that content via the API or via the embedded browser. Thank you very much.